Hi, you're listening to This Is Not Your Practice Life. I'm your host, Macy Renee, and we are going on a journey together, my friends. I'm a certified life and emotional intelligence coach. And if you really want to step into your highest self, there are a few non-negotiables you're going to have to learn, and I am just the person to help you do it. No matter your past, I'm here to help you create a more fulfilling future. So stick around with me. Not only will I teach you how to navigate your brain's daily mind drama, but I'll help you actually understand your mind, your emotions, why you do the things you do, and why others do the things they do. Most importantly, I'll help you build the self-awareness skills to create whatever results you want. It's never too late to change the trajectory of your life. After all, this is not your practice life. Hello and good morning, guys. Welcome back to another episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. My name is Macy, and I'm so excited to chat with you today. I have a really great episode for you, and it's going to be short and to the point, but very relevant, just based on what I've been talking to different clients about and what's been coming up for them, in addition to just friends and family and things like that. So we're going to talk about, the difference really between having empathy, which is such a big one, versus, taking responsibility for other people's emotions. I think sometimes the line can be a little blurry with that of, how do I feel something alongside someone and not become their emotion or take responsibility for what they're feeling? Like, how do I do both? So we're going to talk about that. But before we do talk about that, I just want to remind you that we are in an enrollment period for one-on-one private coaching, which you can sign up for anytime between now and August 9th. And remember that one-on-one private coaching is a 10-week coaching experience with me directly via Zoom. We do 45-minute sessions once a week, every week for 10 weeks. You get a workbook included. And in addition to your Zoom call that is scheduled each week, you get access to the Marco Polo app, where you can reach out to me anytime, Monday through Friday, to get coaching on anything that may be bubbling up for you. So maybe it's something that happens after you have a conversation with a family member, a spouse, a friend, a coworker, and your coaching call has already happened for the week, but you want some additional support. All you have to do is get on Marco Polo, talk to me that way, and I can talk back to you. It's such a great app. My clients really love it, and I have watched them have very fast, tremendous growth by being able to access coaching when they need it in the moment, as opposed to trying to process everything on their own and then having to wait until their next coaching call. So that is how one-on-one coaching works. And now with having the workbook, you don't have to wonder or kind of guess, like, what do I want to talk to Macy about this week? There is so much in the workbook. It's over 230 pages. So there's a lot of journal prompts for you to have things to reflect on. In addition, right now, the special bonus offer that you can opt into, or you can opt out if it's not your thing, is human design. I recently did a program called the Collab Studio. It was all about human design, and it really, really accelerated the growth of so many of my clients in learning themselves inside and out. So this is something that you can choose to have during your 10-week experience. I have a human design expert on board that I'm partnered with. Her name's Emily. She is wonderful, and she's going to be offering my clients 4 sessions. It's already included in the price. I'm covering it at my own expense. I'm not adding anything to my package to, build it in. It's just going to be something that you can either say yes to and take advantage of it, or say no to and opt out of it. But either way, you're not paying more to have these sessions. I'm just going to cover it for the women that are interested. And if there's women that, human design is not of interest to them, that is totally okay. You can opt out. So you have until August 9th to sign up for that. When you sign up, your contract will not start until the week of September 8th, and that is to make sure that if you've opted into human design, that there is time for Emily to prep the things that she needs to prep so that you can go into those 4 sessions using them however you want, but that she has plenty of time to do that, and that I have time to have more workbooks produced and mailed to you. Now, the great thing about it starting September 8th is that we will finish up your 10-week contract just before, maybe 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. So this is kind of like the final run of the year to get everything that you'd like to get, which I promise you is going to very well prepare you for what I have coming next year. So getting clear on what you need for the remainder of this year, you can do that with 10 weeks of private one-on-one coaching. We'll finish right before like Thanksgiving, and then you get to go into the holidays just relaxing, enjoying your time. And then I am so eager to tell you what will be coming for 2026. So exciting. So anyways, you can sign up on MacyRenee.com, click the tab Work with Macy, click private one-on-one coaching, and you can choose whether you want to pay in full or do a payment plan. I'll get in touch with you after. I'm really looking forward to it. Okay, let's get into today's episode. This is something that I think is very important to talk about because I think there can be a lot of confusion around making sure that you're showing up empathetically, which is such a huge piece of our emotional intelligence work, but at the same time, not letting how much you feel for someone turn into taking responsibility for every single thing that they're feeling that is theirs to own. So that line, like I said, can feel a little messy and a little bit blurred. And what I want to do is give you basically 5 key distinctions to make sure you know the difference between practicing actual empathy and when it has crossed that very slippery slope of taking responsibility for their emotions. Okay. So we're going to go through each of these. It's going to be short and sweet. And as always, if you have questions, if you want to explore this work more, the best thing to do is sign up for a consult and we can figure out what may be the best fit for you. But number 1, remember that empathy is feeling with someone. Notice that keyword, with someone. Empathy is really feeling with someone in terms of things like, think of it as like, I can sit in this, whatever that emotion is that they're feeling, with you. I can sit in this with you. So if someone is grieving, you're not taking over their grief, right? But you can sit in the grief with them. You can let them cry. You can let them be angry. You can let them feel their feelings, and you can sit in it and hold space. That is empathy. Empathy honors space, okay? Whereas when you've crossed that slippery little slope into responsibility and you're unsure of like, okay, how do I make sure I, for instance, sit in someone's grief without taking over for them? Responsibility is when you feel like you have to fix something for them, right? So it would be like, I need to fix this grief for them. I need to make them laugh. I need to distract them. Now, I'm not saying specifically with grief that sometimes maybe those friends don't need a healthy distraction or need to laugh. But what I'm saying is when you are actively practicing the skill of empathy, it is not your responsibility to feel something for someone or take responsibility in fixing whatever they're experiencing for them. Okay? You feel it alongside them, with them. It doesn't mean you're in the same exact emotion, but like you're holding space for where they are. You can sit with them in it. You're not trying to fix it. So I'm going to give you a very quick example, but prior to any kind of coaching that I experienced as a client, and I have been in coaching and experiencing coaching since 2016, so 9 years specifically. Prior to my 9 years of getting coached, I had a really hard time sitting with someone in emotion. Now, here's the thing. I would have definitely labeled myself as empathetic, but in the sense of like, I feel everything you're feeling, that kind of thing, right? So maybe you can relate where you're like, I feel other people's emotions and then I want to fix them. Like that is something that I definitely would have said 10 years ago. And if someone was crying, the thing is, it was so uncomfortable for me to have them experiencing emotion that I would often want to fix it for them. Like they would be feeling a type of way, and then my whole body, my insides would shake, starting to feel or take on what they were feeling. And I would feel like the only way to make it go away would be to fix it for them. So like rush them out of the emotion unintentionally by being like, don't cry, or don't worry about it, it's going to get better. And people do this, right? It's not ever like malicious, but we do this. And what I had found after, going through lots and lots of coaching and coaching so many clients at this point, it's like a lot of times the reason that we do that, it's really hard to sit with someone in their raw emotions if we are not honoring that same process for ourselves and don't know how to do it for ourselves. So if, for instance, you have not allowed yourself to ever process something like grief, or you've never experienced grief, or, you truly have like bypassed the work of grieving, then when someone else is grieving because you have not honored feeling that for yourself, or maybe, again, you don't have experience yet experiencing that, it's really hard to sit with someone in that without profound awareness. So that number one thing to keep in mind is, again, empathy is feeling with someone. It's saying, I can sit with you in this, whereas responsibility, taking over, is essentially being like, I need to fix this for you. We don't want to do that. Okay, so just being mindful of that. Number two, empathy is really holding space for people. Okay, empathy is holding space. And again, when I think of holding space, now everybody might have a different definition of this, but when I think of holding space, especially in terms of emotional intelligence work, you are being a neutral party, okay? You are not allowing ego to take over. How do you know when ego takes over? When ego takes over, you will start having opinions. You will have checked out mentally, put yourself in their situation, and you'll probably start giving advice and taking over their situation, right? To explain what you want to explain. Holding space that's very clean and neutral is being a really good listener, a very active listener. And every single time you notice your human self wanting to be human, meaning that your ego is going to want to come in, right, and go into distraction mode and maybe, chime in with what you think, you're just redirecting that piece of you, okay? You're redirecting that piece of you and being much like, I don't need my ego to come in and protect me. I'm here to actively be present and listen to what this person is saying. I am not here to judge them. I am not here to change their mind. I am not here to give my opinion on what I think that they should do or what I think has gone wrong. When you're truly holding space and you're good at holding space, that is such a key part of empathy. You are not going to allow your ego to take over. And that is the big key difference. So empathy holds space, whereas when you're starting to take responsibility and take over, it's going to be ego driven, where you might want to rush someone through their process because you think you have the best answer, or you might even panic because you're taking over their emotional experience, right? And again, kind of going back into that fixing as opposed to truly holding space. So something I have to remind the women in my group coaching programs a lot is holding space is such a skill. And how you know that you're maybe not doing the best job is whenever you stop actively listening and your brain starts wanting to jump into their experience and tell them what you think that they should be doing based on your own experience. That's a sign that ego has taken over. So you just want to be mindful of that. Number 3, so empathy allows others to have their emotional experience, okay? And I know a lot of these kind of go together, but again, we're speaking on empathy and the key important parts of what you need to be mindful of so that you're not taking over someone else's experience or becoming responsible for other people's emotions. So empathy is what we do when we are allowing someone to have their emotional experience. The slippery slope that we sometimes get into is assuming that whatever emotion someone else is experiencing is your fault or your job to soothe. So there is a big difference between supporting someone versus trying to regulate them so that they feel okay or that you feel okay. So in my coaching practice, and you've probably heard this recently, I think I've talked about it a few times in some episodes, the silly example that I share, because I'm a very visual coach. So a lot of times, so are the women that are in a lot of my, coaching programs. And if my brain comes up with the most crazy visuals for things, but I do think that they help. But this one, I imagine it as holding someone else's pen. So I just think of like every single human on the planet carries their own pen and writes their own stories and feels their own emotions and has their, own choices and gets their own results and everything. Like every single person, every single individual has their own ink pen. Okay. And what we often do is grab someone else's pen and try to write their story for them, or try to control their emotions for them, or take responsibility even for emotions that are not even ours. So this is something that I see happen a lot of times, especially with women, and especially if you have childhoods where you walked on eggshells, because you were trying to be a good girl or even a good guy, right? Good boy, whatever. And you walked on eggshells because you weren't sure what emotional reactions to expect out of your caregivers. In those moments when you altered your behavior, or you didn't speak up, or you suppressed emotion or any kind of truth that you were experiencing because of how someone else was going to react or respond, you essentially grabbed their pen. And the problem with grabbing other people's pens, whether it is a parent or a sibling or a best friend or your significant other that you're madly in love with, or whoever it may be, a coworker, when you take their pen, you remove their responsibility to be responsible for their own stories and how they're writing their stories. You, my friend, are responsible for your pen. Again, you could sit your pen down next to someone and be with them, but there's a difference between being very uncomfortable by what they're doing with their pen and taking it over, right? And trying to control it. And I mean that, in such a way where sometimes the way that this shows up for the women that I'm working with is anything that their friends, family, partner, whatever, coworkers are feeling, they will make themselves responsible, and they will be like, well, I need to fix it because they got mad at me, so it must always be me. And this is one of those tricky things where sometimes we do have to take responsibility for, what someone says is like, for instance, if someone says that made me feel really insignificant, or that made me feel really worthless. We want to be able to hear people when they're sharing their feelings, okay? We don't want to just dismiss them and be like, well, you're responsible for your pen, so that's all on you, right? There is a fine line between really hearing what someone is saying and asking ourselves, where could that be true? Like, even if it was unintentional, if someone says I made them feel insignificant, what specifically did I do that maybe I'm not aware of that I could do better and I could change, right? There's responsibility there that we can be very emotionally mature about. But there's also a lot of people that blame because they don't know how to take radical responsibility. There's people who will always be a victim and want people to rescue them emotionally and try to control people by saying, you make me feel this way, or you make me yell, you make me act this way, you make me XYZ. Okay. And when they're constantly doing that, that is totally victimizing themselves and blaming everybody for what they feel. And something that I teach many of my clients is that you have to be mindful of when people are saying that to you, and in the only way that you think you're ever going to feel better is by taking their pen and essentially becoming whoever they need you to be in order to feel better, because in that process, your pen is being ignored and it needs some maintenance, right? If it's a pencil, it needs sharpening. If it's an ink pen, it's out of ink. We need some replacements. So when you neglect yourself, that's a problem, right? And a lot of times the way that this shows up in real life, not talking about the pen example, is that women will feel so disconnected from themselves. They don't know how to trust their own emotions because they have been tiptoeing around the emotions of everybody that blames and doesn't take responsibility themselves. So again, just to reiterate this, empathy allows other people to have their emotional experience, whereas taking responsibility, and not in the good way, right? The slippery slope means that you often will assume their emotions are yours to fix, or it's your fault, or it's your job to soothe them. And you have to let people be responsible for their pen. So sometimes there are people that will blame me for things, and I know that I have not done anything, like I will take responsibility if I've done something, but there are times where I know people just really get into victim cycles, and rather than try to soothe them, I definitely have the response, whether it's to them or not, of that is theirs to fix. That is theirs to learn how to deal with, right? Like I cannot take responsibility in that particular manner. Some things, yes, it's appropriate. Sometimes it truly is appropriate to look at yourself and fix what you need to fix or shift some things you need to shift. Other times you have to be mindful of how people use that to avoid their own work. Okay, so again, slippery slope. If it feels confusing, the best thing to do is work with a coach or mentor who knows this kind of stuff. So that way, when it's happening in real life, you can get to know the difference of how to practice the skills appropriately. And that's another wonderful thing about one-on-one coaching. If a situation like this happened in your life, you could reach out and say, here's what happened, and this is what I want to know based on this specific scenario, right? Okay. Number 4. So the thing about empathy is true empathy will create connection with people. Okay. When you are actually being empathetic, that can be felt. That's an energy, and you will feel a connection between, whether it's one person, multiple people. It's something that is really big in my group coaching programs. There's a lot of empathy for one another. It creates connection. Whereas that slippery slope of being overly responsible will kind of create this, what is it? Like an enmeshment almost. Like true empathy respects people's boundaries, whereas over responsibility kind of blurs the boundaries in the name of being a good person. So you want to be mindful of this, okay? Because people oftentimes want to be perceived a certain way, and so they will take on another person's pen, for example, in the name of not being misunderstood. Whereas true empathy, like it is such an energy, it's such a genuine thing when you're practicing real empathy that it can just be felt, honestly, without words, I think. Like when you're really sitting with someone in their stuff, they can feel that. They can absolutely feel that. Okay, number 5, empathy comes from a grounded presence. Okay, whereas over responsibility will often come with or from fear or guilt. So you want to ask yourself, like, am I doing this, whatever it may be, to kind of like hold space? Am I doing this out of love? Or am I doing this because I'm trying to avoid discomfort or disapproval, or I'm trying to avoid conflict? And that's a big one for the women that I work with. A lot of times, they will want to avoid conflict, and it will feel like if I take responsibility for this person's emotions, then the conflict is avoided and I'll just suppress my own. So a big piece of the work that they do is learning how to just feel more comfortable with that conflict cycling inside of their body or circling inside of their body, that disapproval being inside their body, that discomfort being inside their body, and really honoring what they're feeling as well. Okay. So I wish I had more examples of how this has played out sometimes with clients, because in the moment, it's so clear of when someone has, like, when one of the women that I'm working with has taken over someone else's pen and is absolutely trying to control it because they don't want to feel uncomfortable and they don't want that other person to feel uncomfortable. Meanwhile, what's really happening is they feel wildly uncomfortable because they're having to play a character or pretend to feel okay when they don't feel okay because they don't want another person to explode emotionally. And when you are dedicated to this kind of work, what you will find as you take more emotional responsibility and grow more emotionally mature, you see more and more the people who really struggle with being in a victim mentality or placing blame on other people. And that can feel really hard. And it can be this internal battle of where you really do feel such empathy for them because you see how it's playing out. But then honoring those boundaries within and being like, you know what, I no longer make their emotions mine to fix. And that was probably the biggest thing that I had to learn for myself, was no longer taking other people's emotions on as my own that I needed to fix, and not changing myself in order to fix whatever problems that they had, right? It's kind of like a pacifier, offering a pacifier. It's like, oh, every time you're upset, instead of knowing how to practice skills, you blame. And then instead of me holding you accountable the same way I hold myself accountable, I just give you a pacifier to soothe you. But you never learn anything whenever I give you the pacifier, but the pacifier gives me peace temporarily because at least I don't have to hold your emotions anymore or listen to your emotions anymore, right? But the problem is when you remove the passy or the pacifier, the problem is still there. They haven't actually learned how to be content in putting their own pacifier in their mouth or not needing the pacifier at all, if that makes sense, if that helps more than the ink pen example. Like I said, my analogies can be crazy, but I promise in the moment when they're happening, they usually land. So anyways, I hope that this episode was helpful to you. You know, you are absolutely allowed to be emotionally aware without becoming emotionally entangled, okay? And a big question to ask yourself just before we wrap up is asking yourself, is this mine to hold? Okay, so I can care deeply without having to carry it all. Okay. And keeping that clean space of holding space, managing your ego, being present for someone, which is absolutely being empathetic, feeling for them in the sense of like, yes, I absolutely can empathize with how they're feeling, but I don't need to carry it all on my shoulders as if it's mine or fix it as if it's mine, right? I have to release the pen or the pacifier and allow them to do that. Now, do they know how to do that? Not always. Do they want to know how to do that? Not always. But I always tell people too, like, this podcast alone is a free resource. You can share this with anybody in your life that you think could use it. And then it is up to them if I resonate, even in my voice, my tone, how I speak, my messaging, if they want to listen to it or not. For some people, it's delivered at the right time. It is for them and they change a lot about their life. For others, you may tell them about it and they may never want to learn this information, or I might not be the right person for them to learn it. But you can always share this and give someone the option to take responsibility for their life and learn things they may not know that will actually make their life feel better. But once you have shared it with them, it is yours to release at that point. You've done what you can do. You don't need to carry their pen and say, make them listen, I'm going to make you listen to this, or you have to, or, you don't need to do all of that. So this is another piece of what I mean. You can empathize with where someone's at. If someone is really struggling and they're like, I hate my life and I want it to change and I don't understand why the world hates me and why everything bad always happens to me, you can be with them and really hear them. And then you can offer a solution and say, this might be a free solution that could help you, right? And then you release. It is up to them to say, wow, I'm going to check this out and listen, and I really am ready. Or I'm not ready. I just want to be in my victim mentality. Or I like that you suggested a podcast. That person's not the right person to me, but it made me find another podcast or another person. Okay. So this is another piece of empathy practice. You can really hear someone and sit with them. It's not your responsibility to cater and keep checking in and keep, taking responsibility of, did you listen? Did you find a podcast? Did you do this? Did you do that? And then get yourself all bent out of shape because they're maybe not doing what you think could really help them, and feeling bad yourself because you just want it to work. I know the humanness in you will probably want to do that, but do your best just to let them figure it out. That is a part of their responsibility in carrying their own pen. Okay. All right. I hope this was helpful. Again, you have until August 9th to get into one-on-one coaching. When you sign up with the contract, I will be in touch, but we will not officially start until the week of September 8th. You'll do 10 weeks of coaching, 1 call a week, 45 minutes via Zoom, and then you will also have access to me 5 days a week as you need it on Marco Polo. This was such a great opportunity for the last set of clients that did one-on-one. I truly enjoyed it with them, truly saw so much growth. I know that they gave me feedback that they loved it as well. And again, those 10 weeks get us into, I think, just the second week of November. We'll wrap up, go into the holidays, spend time with your families, enjoy. And then I've got some big surprises and announcements that will be coming alongside what you can expect come 2026. All right. I'll talk to you soon. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. If you'd like to connect on social media, you can find me on both Instagram and Facebook at Macy Renee Coaching. And if you want to stay up to date on all of my offers, announcements, and inspirational emails, you can join my email list at macyrenee.com. In addition, if there's a way that I can further support you in your coaching journey, you can schedule a free 60-minute consult at macyrenee.com anytime you want so we can discuss the best options for you. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye.